Hello friends, in this video we will see execution process. So execution process is how the code gets converted from source code file to the executable file. So execution process contains 4 steps. So these are brief explanation of what happens in executions: pre-processing, compilation, assembling, and linking. So we have a source code file source.c. Source is the file name and .c is the extension. So whenever we create a file, C programming file or the C file, the source file should have an extension of .c. So once we write the program and we do Alt F9. So in the compilation, first pre-processing takes place. What is pre-processing? So we will be defining some pre-processor directives like include, stdio.h, hash define. So these preprocessor directives will help the preprocessor to do some pre-processing. So it's very simple. The preprocessor directives help the preprocessor to do some pre-processing task. So those pre-processing tasks are including a file or defining a macro. So you can use macros. So we will see that in a preprocessor directives video. So once the pre-processing takes place, the code will be expanded. So it becomes an expanded source code. Some file will be included in it. Some macros will be expanded. So that code becomes an expanded source code. So that will be saved as an intermediate file. That will be saved as an intermediate file source.i. So once this intermediate file is created, so it will be given to the compiler. The compilation takes place. So and it's checked for the syntax errors. If there are any syntax errors, so the compiler checks the syntax errors, and once the compilation is complete, it creates an ASM file. Creates an ASM file source.asm. So the extension of this file is source.asm. So it's an assembly code. So what do you mean by assembly code? So every processor, for example, if you are working on an Intel processor, or if you are working on an Atom processor, or if you are working on a AMD processor, so these processors will have different assembly language. The compiler converts the intermediate file to the assembly code which is specific to the processor you're using. If it's an Intel Atom, if it's an Intel Pentium 4, both might have a different set of assembly language code. So the compile converts the intermediate code into assembly code, which can be executed by the processor. So the assembler is responsible for assembling the code. So whatever the assembly language code, the assembler will assemble the code to the machine instructions. Whatever the machine is there, so it will convert to the machine instructions, and then a source.obj file is created. So this is an object file, or it's called relocatable object code. Why does it called relocatable object code? Because the memory address are not assigned for the code and for the data variables. So the memory is not assigned in the RAM. So this is called relocatable object codes. This will be later relocated to the RAM and then we can start execution. So this relocatable object code will next be linked with some library codes. So we will be using some library functions in the program. So if we want to use those functions, the linker will link the object code of those library functions. So this object code of the library functions will be linked with the relocatable object code of our program. So both are linked together, and then the linker creates an executable source code file, executable binary files. So the relocatable object code, the OBJ file is also a binary file, but a part of file will be binary, so it cannot be used for execution. You cannot directly execute the object file, so it should be linked using the linker. So all this linker, assembler, compilers, and preprocessor are a part of compilation software, the compiler software. So at the end, so the linker links both the object code of the library functions which we use and the object code of the function, the program what we have written, and then it creates executable code source.exe file. So this executable file can be run using the editor. You can say Control F9 to run the program, or you can double click go to the location and double click on the source.exe file and start executing the program. So you should be careful. This is machine dependent code. So if you try to execute the same exe file on a Linux machine, it will not work. Because we have to compile the program, C program in a Linux machine and then create an executable code for the Linux machine. This code will be executable only when the Windows machine .exe files. Again, it depends upon the compiler, 16-bit compiler, whether it's a 16-bit program or a 32-bit program. So compatibility issues will be there with an exe file. Sometimes when you try to double click an exe file, it says it's a 16-bit compatible, cannot be executed. So you should be careful. You can use the 32-bit compilers like Microsoft Visual C++ or 32-bit compilers, GNU C compilers to compile and create executable files. So this way, the process of converting a source code file to an exe file, the executable file, is known as execution process. It's actually a total of compilation and execution process. So we will see, we already seen executing many programs, and we will see more programs in the upcoming videos. Thank you for watching this video.